Matt Miller, Bleacher Report, NFL draft expert, and has been doing so for a decade or so. Good to have you back, Matt. How are you?
I'm doing well, Dan. It's good to be back on with you guys as well.
All right, explain this. Josina Anderson had something that maybe somebody's going up to get the number 2 pick with the Washington Redskins. Fact or fit? I mean, is there something here?
I'm sure someone has tried, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen. And I think with Chase Young, I almost feel like this happens every year, usually with an Ohio State defensive end. Like this happened to Nick and Joey Bosa, too, where by late April, we're like, oh, we're over this guy. He's been great for 3 years. I don't want to hear about it anymore. But Chase Young is the best player in the draft. No disrespect to Joe Burrow. Chase Young's the best player in the draft. He should be a 10 or 12 sack player right away. He's going to have an amazing impact. That's not the kind of guy you trade away from, especially when I do think it is a need. So I'm sure Josina's right. I'm sure someone did offer a package of picks. That doesn't mean Washington has to take that package of picks. As you were saying before, I think it's more likely they trade Trent Williams, whether that's to the Browns, the Buccaneers, the Broncos, someone in that 10 to 15 pick range, and then they double down and get an offensive tackle somewhere in the middle of the first round.
And I don't know who needs that tackle more. Is it Denver? Is it Cleveland? Or is it Tampa? I mean, Tampa's offensive line is not good at all. But if you were going to place Trent Williams, where would you place him?
Well, if I'm Trent Williams, I want to go to Tampa. I want to play with Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski and have fun down there at the adult establishments that they have in Tampa Bay. I don't want to go to Cleveland and deal with Baker Mayfield and all the personalities on that team. Denver would be okay, but you're not beating Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs. So if you go to Denver, you see at best you're a wild card team for as long as he's 32. For the rest of your career, you're a wild card team. So if I'm Trent Williams, I think he's his own agent. So he should be talking to Kyle Smith and the Redskins today, saying, "Hey, I want to go to Tampa. That's where I want to end up." Because other than that, I mean, the Jets, even a lot of the other teams that need offensive tackles and might be willing to trade, they're not good teams, and you have the possibility of going to Tampa, which I heard this morning that they almost dealt for him a couple weeks ago. They almost traded O.J. Howard for Trent Williams. So I think there's already a framework there that hopefully something like that does get done.
Who will make a trade tomorrow in the first round?
Oh, I think a lot of people. I think we're going to see a lot of trades this year because these GMs have been sitting at home trying to avoid their wives and kids with nothing to do but get on the phone with each other. So I think we'll see a lot of trades. I think the Panthers probably want to trade back. The Cardinals, the Jaguars probably want to trade back. So that's 3 teams in the top 10. I think the Falcons would like to come up to get C.J. Henderson from Florida. Feels like the Broncos would like to come up as well to get a wide receiver like Jerry Jeudy from Alabama or CeeDee Lamb from Oklahoma. So I think we could see a decent amount of action. Also, we always see a little bit at the end of the first round, but the 49ers don't have a pick in round 2, 3, or 4. They're going to want more picks. The Chiefs only have 5 selections in this draft. They're going to want more picks. Saints only have 5 picks. So I think we could even see those, 24 to 32. We could see a lot of action there as people try to get out.
When we're rewatching this draft in 5 years, who's the quarterback that we can't believe was drafted in that spot? If I said Burrow, Tua, Herbert, Jordan Love, or Jalen Hurts?
I will take Jordan Love just because I feel like he does have the best potential, but potential is such a dirty word in evaluating because not very many people realize it. I'm sure like everybody else, I was watching the 2017 redraft last night, and to see Mahomes fall to 10, and there'd be a lot of skepticism of what this guy is going to be. He went to the perfect landing spot, and for Jordan Love, it would take a similar perfect landing spot. Maybe that's the Colts where he can sit and learn from Phillip Rivers, somewhere where he's not going to be forced into action right away. Maybe it's Tampa where he can learn behind Tom until he's ready to move on. But I think Jordan Love's raw talent is really intriguing, not to the point that he should be a top 5 pick, maybe not even a top 10 pick. But I do think if there's going to be one guy on the positive side, if there's one guy that surprises us, it would be Jordan Love. On the negative, I mean, I feel really good that Justin Herbert's going to go number 5 overall, and I feel really good that he should not go number 5 overall. So he might be the Mitch Trubisky. I just don't think he's that good, Dan. I really don't. Everyone, when they talk about Justin Herbert, they point to one game, the Rose Bowl, and then it's like, oh, but look how good he was at the Senior Bowl in the Combine. You're in shorts. There's no defense.
But, Matt, if you see it, why don't other teams see it?
I think because I don't have to draft a quarterback or I'm going to lose my job. Like, Bleacher Report's not going to fire me if I miss on a quarterback. I'm going to get embarrassed on Twitter. That's all that's going to happen. So there's so much pressure from owners and fans, and especially, if you're Miami, you haven't had a quarterback since Dan Marino. And you have to look at what Drew Brees does every year in New Orleans and say, we passed on that. So now I think there is just an incredible amount of pressure. It's why E.J. Manuel goes in the first round. It's why you trade up for Mitch Trubisky. It's this position more than any other gets over-evaluated. Justin Herbert at the end of the year was not the second-best quarterback in his draft class. But Thursday night, he'll be drafted at that spot. So I think that's where sort of teams miss and mess up. And I hope I'm wrong. I want every player to succeed, but I just cannot sign off on that guy being a top 5 pick.
What about Tua?
I love Tua. You just feel bad for him because of the injuries. I think that's who Miami should draft. But again, if he has arthritis in his hip and can't play to the level we expect, I don't get fired for saying that's who they should draft. There are questions there. He's had 4 surgeries in 2 years. The hand, both ankles, and the hip. And even if you say, hey, he's cleared for football activity, okay, he is today, April 22nd. What's going to happen October 5th? How's he going to look there? He's not stayed healthy for an entire season at Alabama. And so I think when you draft him, that's just something you might have to deal with. You might have to be aware of the fact that we might not get this guy for 16 games. This might be a Ben Roethlisberger situation where he's going to be really good when he's on the field, and when he's not, you need to have a pretty good backup because it might not be, or 17 games once we get to that level. But I think Tua does everything you want. Touch, timing, accuracy. Like the most important part of playing the position, can you throw the ball where it's supposed to go? Tua does that really, really well. He does it consistently from the pocket, on the move. It's outside of the injuries, I think he's everything you would want.
Well, that's why if I'm the Chargers and he falls into my lap at 6 and I'm moving into a new stadium and we can sit him for as long as we want with Tyrod Taylor, and I've had people say this, when it comes to the draft, you take risk, you take chances. Dan Orlovsky said, hey, you take I know what Justin Herbert is. I'm not quite sure what Tua is going to be. Don't be afraid to be great. Don't be afraid to roll the dice here. If I'm the Chargers and Tua's there, and you really feel like you want a quarterback, I consider that a godsend.
I do too, and it not just from a business perspective of you're moving into a new stadium, you need a face of the franchise. From a football perspective, like you said, they are telling everyone who will listen that they like Tyrod Taylor. Okay, let Tyrod play until you feel comfortable with Tua, until he can acclimate and you're really, really comfortable with the health. But I do think people forget the owners are involved in the draft. In a normal year, that owner is in the draft room with everyone, helping make these decisions. And eventually you have to sell tickets. Tua being from Hawaii, keep him over there on the West Coast. In L.A., he's going to be a superstar. And you're also getting – I think he's the most marketable, most well-known player in this draft. Joe Burrow is going to be the first pick. Tua is the household name. I get asked about him more than any player in the draft. So I think it makes sense for the Chargers, not to mention how amazing is he going to look in those new uniforms. Some guys just look like they're meant to be on a team. Tua's meant to be a Charger.
That's great. Maybe it'll make it look faster. Matt Miller, Bleacher Report, NFL Draft Insider, joining us here. All right, I'm going to make you the GM and just give me like a 10 or 15 second what you would do. You're the Bengals GM. What do you do at number 1?
Joe Burrow I've already handed the card in. It's that easy.
Okay. The Redskins.
Chase Young. Again, similar. It's that easy. This is a generational type talent.
Detroit.
I would trade. I would try to trade out. I think you could move back to 5 or 6 and still get Jeff Okudah, the corner from Ohio State.
Would you consider a quarterback at 3?
Not if I'm the Lions. They have too much money wrapped up in Matthew Stafford. I think you have to. You're paying him $30 million this year. I think you have to give it one more year if it doesn't work. Next year, you look at Trevor Lawrence, Trey Lance, Justin Fields. I think 2021 is when you move on if you have to.
And the New York Giants.
So I would take Isaiah Simmons because I know exactly what he is. He's a difference maker. I compared him to Sean Taylor. Like, I've never seen anyone on defense like this. They'll probably take an offensive tackle because it's Dave Gettleman, but the chance, like Isaiah Simmons is so much better at his position than all these tackles are at theirs. There's not a Trent Williams, a Tyron Smith. There's not an elite tackle. Isaiah Simmons is an elite defensive player.
Miami Dolphins.
I would take Tua and say, you know what, we missed on Drew Brees because we were a little afraid to take a risk. We're not going to make that same mistake again.
The Chargers, if Tua's not there.
So I would take a tackle. I would take Jedrick Wills. They traded Russell Okung. I would take a tackle, roll with Tyrod Taylor. And then in the second round, I would draft Jalen Hurts. He's probably going to be there. He fits what they want to do offensively. At 37 overall, if I could walk out of there with Jedrick Wills and Jalen Hurts, I would feel very, very good about my first two picks.
And I was wondering if let's say Tua is available for Carolina, available for Jacksonville, available for the Raiders. Out of those three teams, who bites?
I would say the Jags, just because Gardner Minshew, you have nothing invested in him. Like, you got kind of lucky last year that he was good. Salary's unimportant. And if you replace him, this guy was a day 3 pick. We didn't value him that much at the time. We now have a very inexpensive, very good quarterback room. The Panthers have invested in Teddy for a couple of years. And with the Raiders, I actually don't think Tua is a great fit for John Gruden's offense. So I can understand the allure there.
Yeah.
John always wants to get better at quarterback, but I think of those, Jacksonville would be the best fit for him.
I'll leave you with this. Write the headline for Friday morning.
Oh, wow. That's tough. I mean, I think the headline's going to be about the quarterbacks falling. Herbert's going to go 5, and then where Tua goes. If he doesn't go 6, do the Patriots trade up to get him? Do the Saints get their quarterback of the future? Do the Packers get a quarterback of the future? So I think, when I stumble out of bed Friday morning, that's probably what I'll be thinking about is how much the quarterback landscape in the NFL changed overnight.
Great stuff, Matt, and have fun tomorrow. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. Have a great one.
That's Matt Miller, Bleacher Report NFL draft expert.